Joe, I can't sleep. Tell me a scary story.
Okay, this is a story that was told to me a while ago. Whispers of peculiar happenings at Jake's apartment became the town's staple for late-night gossip. Those old brick walls and creaky floors always had stories to tell, but recent events had put it under a different spotlight altogether. The tale everyone knew, or at least thought they knew, was the mystery of Jake's introverted cousin Sam. Sam had moved into Jake's place a few months back, fresh-faced and full of excitement about starting at the local school. It was meant to be a new chapter for him, away from home and embracing the world of academia. Jake, on the other hand, had been caught up in the whirlwind of his high-paced job, often coming home late and leaving early. The two, though living under the same roof, were like ships passing in the night. However, Sam, ever the doting cousin, often left heartwarming gestures to bridge the distance. More often than not, Jake would come home to find home-cooked meals waiting for him. Sam's way of ensuring they still shared something despite their contrasting schedules. And on the rare occasions their schedules overlapped, they'd find themselves deep in conversation, reminiscing about family gatherings, discussing Sam's new friends, and occasionally diving deep into Sam's challenges at school. But one fateful evening, the atmosphere in Jake's apartment shifted in a way he'd never forget. With the room dimly lit by the ambient glow of his laptop screen, Jake was deeply engrossed in answering a barrage of emails. The sound of the front door creaking open was hardly noticeable at first, but the soft, muffled sobs that followed soon caught his attention. Sam stumbled into the room, eyes bloodshot and swollen, his face a map of anguish. Each step he took seemed heavy, weighed down by some invisible burden. When he finally looked up, Jake was met with a gaze that spoke volumes of pain and humiliation. It's the guys at school," Sam managed to stammer out, his voice quivering. "I thought things would be different here, but it's just like before. They mock me, Jake, every single day." Jake, overwhelmed by the pressures of his own world and the mounting deadlines, hardly registered the depth of Sam's distress. With an absent-minded nod, he advised, "Look, Sam, high school can be tough, people can be cruel, but you gotta push through, okay? Don't let them get to you." Yet, as he returned to his emails, a gnawing feeling of unease settled in his stomach, suggesting that perhaps he had missed something crucial in Sam's plea for understanding. The days following that emotional revelation from Sam seemed to be wrapped in an uncanny fog. The once lively apartment that echoed with Sam's enthusiasm and occasional laughter grew silent. Every morning, Jake would find Sam staring blankly at the cityscape outside their window, his thoughts seemingly a million miles away. The delightful aromas that once wafted from the kitchen, signaling Sam's latest culinary experiments, were replaced by a dull, repetitive menu. What struck Jake most was the change in the meals. Gone were the vibrant spices, fresh herbs, and creative pairings Sam was known for. Instead, Jake would come home to overcooked pasta, unseasoned chicken, or at times, just plain bread and water. The transformation was so jarring that Jake initially thought Sam might be pulling some extended prank or trying to make a point. However, as the days turned to weeks, Jake's concern grew. He'd catch glimpses of Sam, lost in thought, sometimes scribbling furiously in a journal he'd never seen before. Occasionally, there were hushed phone calls late at night, where Sam's tone was a mix of anger and desperation, wanting to respect his cousin's privacy and chalk it up to the growing pains of adjusting to a new environment. Jake chose not to press the issue, giving Sam the space he seemed to desperately need. But deep down, an unsettling feeling nagged at him, warning him that something was profoundly amiss. But one evening, something was different. As Jake unlocked the door and stepped inside, he was greeted by an overwhelming aroma that felt like a comforting embrace. Rich scents of roasted meats, fresh herbs, and simmering sauces wafted through the air. The dimly lit apartment had been transformed. Candles were placed strategically, casting a soft, warm glow on the walls and revealing a lavishly set dining table in the center of the room. From the kitchen, the soft, melodious hum of a familiar tune floated into the living room. Sam was there, dancing slightly as he moved between the stove and the counter, adding finishing touches to an array of dishes that looked straight out of a gourmet magazine. Seeing Jake, he broke into a wide, genuine smile, his eyes twinkling with excitement, a stark contrast to the somber and distant figure he had been in recent days. "Hey Jake," he called out cheerfully. "I met someone amazing at the park today. He shared some unique recipes and I thought I'd give them a try." He went on to speak about this newfound friend, sharing little details of their conversation and their plans to meet again soon. Jake tilted his head slightly, a mixture of curiosity and concern evident in his gaze. The sudden change in Sam's demeanor and the mention of a mysterious friend raised questions in his mind. But seeing Sam so full of life, so genuinely happy after such a long time, Jake decided not to probe. Instead, he simply expressed his pleasure at seeing his cousin in such good spirits and prepared himself for what promised to be an unforgettable meal. However, the following day unfolded like a scene straight from a horror film. As Jake returned from work, the usual buzz of the apartment was eerily replaced by an unsettling silence. The kitchen, which was usually filled with the inviting aroma of Sam's cooking, was cold and lifeless. Every corner of the apartment whispered the same unsettling truth. Sam was nowhere to be found. Growing anxious, Jake tried calling him, but each ring echoed the mounting dread in his chest. Texts went unanswered, and every social media platform they shared was devoid of any recent activity from Sam. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Remembering a phone tracker app they had installed months earlier, initially as a way to keep an eye on each other during late-night outings, Jake hastily opened it. The blip representing Sam's phone was pulsating deep within the coordinates of a nearby forest. A forest that was rarely visited due to tales of its haunting past and dense, almost suffocating foliage. With a sinking feeling, Jake recalled how locals whispered about the woods, how they warned children never to venture there after dark. The screen's glow illuminated his determined face as he geared up for what might be the most crucial search of his life, not realizing that the very forest which stood as a beacon on his phone screen held secrets darker than he could imagine. In the heart of the forest, where the thick canopy barely let any light through, Jake stumbled upon Sam. He was sitting at the base of a gnarled old tree, its bark twisted as if it had witnessed 1,000 torments. Sam's eyes, once bright and full of youth, now appeared vacant and distant, as if gazing into another world. The look wasn't just empty, it was haunting, like he had seen something that had stripped away a piece of his soul. Jake, his heart pounding, called out to him, but Sam didn't respond. It was only when Jake shook him that Sam seemed to snap out of his trance. Without a word, and with Jake's persistent coaxing, Sam let himself be led back to the apartment. The journey back was silent, save for the soft rustling of the leaves and the heavy weight of unease. Once home, the strangeness intensified. Where Sam used to prepare colorful, aromatic dishes, his culinary choices took a dark turn. The refrigerator, once stocked with fresh vegetables and a variety of proteins, now seemed to contain only cuts of unfamiliar meat. There were no fragrant spices, no vibrant veggies, just raw, red, unseasoned meat that he'd cooked to an almost burnt crisp. wasn't just the food. Sam would often be seen staring at the slabs of meat for long periods, as if trying to communicate or searching for something within them. The entire apartment took on a stifling metallic scent, and every mealtime became a test of endurance for Jake. Then, one evening, after a particularly long day at work, Jake tiptoed into Sam's room. The dim light from the street lamp outside cast a glow on Sam's face, making him look almost peaceful, a stark contrast to his recent behavior. Assuming he was in a deep sleep, Jake felt it might be the perfect time to indulge in a little self-care. He began to draw a bath, hoping the warm water would help him unwind. However, before he could even step in, a sharp, fetid stench assailed his senses. It was as if decay itself had seeped into the very tiles of the bathroom. The atmosphere grew heavy, choking him, and the water from the showerhead, which should have been a clear stream, was instead a thick, inky cascade. It pulled around his feet, sticky and warm. In growing horror, Jake realized it wasn't water, it was blood. Desperate, he lunged for the door, but it refused to move, as if some unseen force held it firmly in place. The room's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and then the silence was shattered by a voice. It sounded like Sam, but the tone was cold, detached, dripping with malevolence. "It's just a little blood," it whispered, the sound curling around Jake like a chilling wind. Every hair on his body stood on end, realizing he wasn't alone in that room. In sheer panic, Jake's mind raced as he desperately searched for an escape route. The bathroom window, usually too small and high to consider, suddenly became his lifeline. With adrenaline surging, Jake clawed at the latch, managing to push the window open. Taking a deep breath, and with no time to consider the drop below, he heaved himself through the window and tumbled into the overgrown backyard. Pushing through the pain of scraped knees and palms, Jake didn't dare look back. Every sound, every rustle in the bushes amplified his fear, making him believe that whatever had been impersonating Sam was close on his heels. The streets were oddly empty, the pale glow of the streetlights casting eerie shadows that seemed to play tricks on his eyes. Gasping for breath, he finally reached the police station and frantically relayed his tale to the skeptical officers on duty. Their disbelief, however, quickly transformed into concern. A team was dispatched to Jake's apartment immediately. Hours felt like days, but eventually the officers returned, their faces ashen and eyes wide with horror. It was evident that whatever they'd witnessed was beyond their regular line of duty. One of them managed to speak, voice shaking. "We found a body," he began hesitatingly, "in Sam's closet, decomposed, been there for days." Another officer added, eyes not meeting Jake's. "It was Sam." Chills ran down Jake's spine. If the body was Sam's, then who or what had been living with him? And where was it now? Later, Jake delved deeper into the town's whispered stories, uncovering an old urban legend that sent chills down his spine. There were tales of a malevolent entity, a shadowy figure known as the Woodsman. This spectral figure was said to haunt the nearby woods, preying on the loneliness and despair of its victims, luring them with the promise of friendship, only to trap their souls in a liminal space between life and death. Elders in the town spoke in hushed tones about the many who had ventured into those woods and never returned. Those who did manage to escape would come back changed, their eyes vacant, their spirits crushed, as if part of them was still trapped in the grip of the woodsman. It was believed that the entity sought to possess the living, using their bodies as vessels to navigate the world outside its wooded domain. Though no concrete evidence had been found, the many inexplicable disappearances and the eeriness of the forest were enough to give credibility to the story. retrospect, realized that the signs were all there with Sam. The sudden changes, the disturbing behavior, and that ghastly meal. Now, whenever Jake finds himself near those woods, an oppressive feeling of being watched settles over him. The air turns cold, the sounds of nature mute, and he could swear he catches fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure lurking just beyond his peripheral vision. And on particularly quiet nights, when the wind carries whispers from the heart of the forest, Jake is haunted by the chilling laughter of Sam, a reminder of the dark legend that nearly claimed him.